Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Pop Culture Uncovered. As always, we are discussing the latest and the greatest, especially what's being provided to us by the House of Mouse, also known as the Great Father Disney, who seems to be hit or miss as of late, which isn't surprising, seeing how it's the same people who gave you Song of the South. So we ain't got to front like everything that Disney ever did was always dope, because between that and them crows from Pinocchio, I'm sorry, from Dumbo. There's always been a little something, but they actually cast an African American in the television show that wasn't, a legacy character like Captain America, and so we now have Wonder Man, which I will just tell everybody right now. I was a West Coast Avengers fan growing up, so I'm very familiar with Simon Williams, with the red eyes and the Rocket Belt. And my first thought when they announced this is, I cannot believe they're actually turning Wonder Man into a live action anything, because Wonder Man is one of those Marvel characters who he never carried a book on his own very well. He had one series, I think, right around the days of the Infinity Gauntlet that lasted for maybe 50 issues, and beyond that, he's always been a solo player. And the history of Marvel generally says that characters that could not carry their own solo books tend not to be properties that do well. But we'll find out tonight if that trend continues or if I'm wrong like crap. So we will start with the person who has damn near inhaled the absolute entirety of this show on the day of recording. It just got released. So, Belle,
Hey,
you have watched all of Wonder Man with, I'm not going front, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who's one of my favorite actors. I still go
yes.
back to his performance as Black Manta in the first Aquaman movie, and I'm like, y'all should have just given me a full Manta villain movie and then spun that into some Suicide Squad stuff or something. But nevertheless, you've watched it, you've watched him. What were your thoughts as a fellow thespian?
This is the most honest portrayal of what it's like to be an actor I've seen on screen in quite some time. There was a show, I don't know if you guys remember this show, that was on NBC where it was supposed to be set with Broadway and they had a bunch of musical numbers. I can't remember the name of the show, I just remember the cast. And one of the reasons it never clicked was because it wasn't as realistic as it could be. This show is very much realistic. I am loving this journey we're on with Simon. I'm going to try to do this without spoiling it too much. Uh, but what I will say is that the basic premise is just slightly different because you are a West Coast Avengers, Great Lakes Avengers person, so you know you're familiar with the character. Pete, on the other hand, is not familiar with the character at all, right?
Correct, not at all.
Okay. So in the comics, Simon's dad owned the Williams Company Corporation, and he and the Starks were rivals, and he blamed Howard mostly for like them basically losing a lot of their customers, and that carried over to Simon and Eric. And so Simon makes a terrible deal with Baron Zemo, which I was like, yeah, I on the one hand, Baron Zemo is still alive in the MCU. He ain't dead. But I don't think we're gonna have with Simon being black. I don't think we should have him being big buddies with a Nazi. I think that's probably bad. Even if he is super charming, which he is in the film universe, I gotta credit where credit's due. He is. Um, so he blamed him. Zemo injected him with this formula that would allow him to have superpowers. He becomes a flying brick. But unfortunately, Zemo basically put a back door into the formula that if he ever turned on him, it would kill him. Simon turns on him, joins up with the Avengers, takes him down, he dies. Now, this is going to, and I'm going to try to keep this rant short. This is going to go into why I hate Age of Ultron so very much for multiple reasons, but this is specifically why.
Bell, does this mean that you want to talk about the inexorable love triangle between Wonder Man and Wanda and Vision? Because it's the
Yes,
same
she
man with
does.
the same
I
personality.
do.
Is that what you're discussing?
Yes.
Okay.
So, because I want to bring it back to the show. So, basically, Simon, goes, no, we're not doing this. He had infiltrated the Avengers. He realized that Tony wasn't the person he was told he was, and he fell in love with Wanda, and then he dies. Tony tries to save him by putting him in stasis and mapping his brainwaves until they can find a cure. During that time, Hank Pym, MCU, created Ultron, you bitches. And he created Ultron. Ultron wanted basically siblings. So, in his pursuit of doing that, he creates Shikasta and Vision. Vision was based on Simon Williams' brainwaves. And Ultron, because he doesn't understand humanity, doesn't understand why Vision turns on him. And I'm like, well, you based him on the brainwaves of somebody who saw bad things happen and realized he was on the wrong side and switched sides. What did you think was going to happen, you dumbass? Anyway, bringing it back to the show. The basics are the same. Simon, except for we never see Simon's dad, which I think is on purpose. We have see his mom, but the difference here is that Simon is born with his powers. He's not given them. He's born with his powers, and I love this was a little thing. And Pete, I don't know if you've watched the first 3 episodes, right? If I'm not
Yep.
mistaken. Okay. I don't know if you caught on to this when you watched the episode, but the doctor who examines him after the first actual manifestation of his abilities is a black woman. She knows that what happened was not a simple house fire. She knows. But because of black people and black women in particular's history in this country in particular of being experimented on, she doesn't say a dang thing. She's like, yup, it was just a house fire. He was, it's a miracle. And she doesn't say squat. So one of the
Hmm.
premises of the show is that the Department of Damage Control, they know Simon has powers, but they can't prove that Simon has powers because everybody in Simon's life, because of the history of black people in this country being experimented on, they're like, he ain't got nothing. He's just an ordinary guy. He's just an ordinary guy who's an actor because they know we have been down this road before and we're not doing that. And I do love that by changing his race, and I really do, if I'm not mistaken, they just had everybody who they thought would be right for the part audition, and Yaya is the one that got it. That change brings another layer to the character that was not there originally. And it gives a no, Simon Williams was always a nuanced character, but I think that this adds another layer that makes him a deeper character, and it speaks more to the history of this country and the history of the medical profession when it comes to black and brown bodies. And I really appreciated that little thing that they did. The show is delightful. It is brutally honest about what it is like to be an actor. I really enjoy Ben Kingsley being brought back as Trevor Slattery, aka Faux Mandarin. I really love that they didn't have to bring that character back. Technically, his character arc could have been considered over after Shang-Chi. But the way they brought him back and how they have integrated him into the storyline both makes sense from a writing point of view. It makes sense for everything we've seen about the character up until this point. And it makes sense that he completes his arc in a way that doesn't remove him from the playing field, if that makes sense. The casting has been absolutely wonderful. There was one character who I never. Armand, do you remember Doorman? You remember that character?
Yeah, for the Great Lakes Avengers. Yeah, that was one of my
Yeah,
favorite issues.
I
Yep,
was
yep.
not expecting him to show up on this show, and he shows up. And it's honestly, this actor that they cast, I'm like, he's literally in one episode, and he has a profound impact on everything that's going on the show. And because I'm trying to keep this as spoiler free as possible, and it's so hard. And he is wonderfully, upsettingly tragic, and that's the only way I can say it. His power set is, if you haven't read the comics, I don't even want to spoil. I don't even want to tell y'all. I honestly don't even want to tell you. I want you to go and watch the show. So I have been enjoying it a great deal. I think it's kind of doing the same thing that Fantastic Four did, in that it is telling a complete storyline in and of itself, the same way Echo did, the same way the Fantastic Four did, that the same way Moon Knight did. If those characters and my absolute favorite, which was, Werewolf by Night, if these characters show up again in the MCU, I will be ecstatic. But we got a complete story for them in this situation. And so if I hope we see all of those characters again, but I am surprisingly satisfied with how the show ended and with how they left the door open for all of these people to come back.
Bell, I haven't watched the show. All I will say is this: as a fan of the Avengers, Simon's like one of the only characters where I don't think he's ever really anything other than an Avenger. Lots of the Avengers leave and go different stuff, and some of them double as defenders. Some of them were members of the Champions. But Simon's always basically either a East Coast Avenger on the team. That was the red sunglasses and red suit, red jump jacket days when him and Beast are best friends. Which hint to Marvel, seeing how you bringing back mutants. Um,
Beast.
Beast, Beast was an Edward. Beast was an Avenger, and Simon was his best pal. So,
I would love to see that. I'm still mad that Daredevil and Black Widow didn't have any interaction when they're best friends in the comics.
And ex-lovers. Yeah, no, I agree. I guess so. I guess, Bill, my question is, with you're saying the story comes to a satisfying conclusion. As a comic book Wonder Man fan, can you see a logical reason for him to be a member of the Avengers maybe after we get out of Doomsday and Secret War, or
Yes.
is this okay?
Specifically because we haven't gotten Eric's story yet. And I'm not going to spoil for y'all, for people who haven't read the books. There are hints. There are hints throughout the show. Pete, you haven't. I don't think you've gotten. Have you gotten to the episode with his mom yet?
Yes.
Okay. There are hints throughout the show, but we don't get it yet. And so they've left that storyline and what Simon does in the comics, which is what brings Eric in. They very much left that the final episode very much, it's not the same as what he does in the comics, but what he does in the final episode or two basically sets up what happens to his character in the comics and why Eric then comes into play.
Which I think is finally intelligent, because it's like, look, the Avengers have their own rogues gallery of villains that don't really work in any other setting other than being Avengers villains. And oh, by the way, they're not just one offs. The villains team up and work together as well. So the character, who I will not spoil it, seeing how but knowing what character you're talking about, is a rather central historical Avengers villain, where on almost every single consequential run of Avengers, I think the character at least makes a passing appearance. So I hope
who is one of his main besties, as it were, who's coming up. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So for all right. So as a fan who hasn't seen anything, that's encouraging to me, because that at least makes me more open to investing my time to watch it, knowing the fact that they didn't close off doors with characters, which, let's not front, Marvel does. Pete, you watched the first 3 episodes, and as uninformed as I am about this show, you are uninformed about the character. So you have a completely fresh take on the character in terms of only really knowing him from this appearance in live action. What was your take on the first 3 episodes of the show?
It's an interesting show about actors. Is really the almost the entire first episode really leaves you, it left me at least trying to figure out whether I like this show or whether I'm just kind of hanging on for the next one. And I think it's tricky because each of the episodes is directed and acted superbly. I mean, it's almost like they treat acting like a trick, like a talent. I mean, not just to watch Ben Kingsley just like slip into a character for 5 seconds as an actor slipping into a character, you start to lose track of whether you're watching something um, that is more real than it actually is. And that's what makes the show interesting. And then like it isn't for almost the entire first episode, before I forget, before I realize again, oh right, I'm watching an MCU show. And I I feel like I feel like I have completely turned a corner because when it comes to Marvel, Disney, because even though it's just I've watched fewer and fewer movies, I felt like sort of obligated less and less to stay caught up with every single movie that comes out and even every TV show. I feel like that's almost as true a comic book experience as I have ever had in my life. Like sometimes I just quit reading the main run and I'm only reading, these sort of side books that everyone's, talking about and are done by some unknowns or some people you hadn't expected to see, and then sometimes I'm like, these side books have kind of wrapped, or it just didn't keep that quality, so now I'm back to the main book when I'm kind of annoyed with it. Like almost nothing right now feels more like the comic book experience than the Marvel MCU, all the way down to the fact that we have entire alternate reality. I mean, it's like, oh, this run of the Avengers is about to come to an end, or they're about to find a way to like retcon a whole bunch of stuff or combine stuff. We see this in comic books, and so as soon as I started looking at it through that lens, it made it easier to watch some of the Marvel that I've been missing, and that happened right at the time that this show dropped, where I'm like, I may like it, I may not, but it doesn't mean it wasn't good, or it doesn't mean it didn't have something to say. It wasn't amazingly done. And so even though some of these, I'm sort of just confused about the character, trying to figure out what's going on. And to me, I think that's the worst kind of show, is one that rolls out so slowly when I already don't know something. It makes me think, wow, when am I going to get some answers? The show is just taking its time. And so I just don't know if I love that, or if it's or if it's just something new that I'm just not used to, and so it's taking me a second to sort of get my feet under me and figure out how I feel about this show. But then really it's just, I'll just watch another episode. I mean, that's also kind of the reality, is I'll just watch another episode, because everyone is just acting so brilliantly in it, and there is this question of like, who what is supposed to happen next, and that this story is very new to this character. At least makes me feel like, okay, I'm not the only one in the dark. I'm just more so. So I don't know. I think I've been enjoying it. I will tell you this. It makes me feel there's characters that are really easy to hate. I will definitely say that.
Yes.
And and yeah, like yeah, he makes it really easy to like even the worst parts of this character, because at the very beginning, he's just overthinking things in this way that you're like, this reminds me of me, but also it drives me crazy when other people do this, and oh my God, I hate this so much. But he's so captivating. I was going to say charismatic, but it's captivating. So when he's on screen and he's talking and he's engaged, you're believing every single thing that's happening. And the same is true of Ben Kingsley. And so the two of them together just become this unit where, like, I'll believe whatever the two of you decide is happening right now. I will 100% believe it.
Chemistry together is so absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I was not expecting it, and I'm like, I love them. I would watch seasons of those two doing whatever they want to do. Like, right? Honestly. They're perfectly opposite of each other, and it works so well. So shout out to the casting director, because I do think once they decided they were going to bring Ben Kingsley back, that whoever they cast was going to have to be able to work opposite him.
And that's one little thing also that again is giving me that comic book feeling, is how many times have we had a Mort ass character get introduced and you're like, oh my god, why do they keep bringing this guy back? Or like a character that just that stood out enough that some writer was like reached back 15 years was like, who we're gonna bring back? This character. And so whether you like the Trevor Slattery character and everything that was done with it and all of the fake Mandarin stuff and everything else, I don't think there's anyone who doesn't have an opinion about it when it comes to MCU. Um, eh, However you feel, that to me is just like that's what comic book characters are. That's what these characters come out of, like a 2-issue arc, and then all of a sudden they're back again and back again and back again. And he's kind of at this point a welcome sight for me.
Yeah.
Well, Bell, I know that you wanted to talk about the lead writer for the show before we stepped out. Um, what because this for you it's an unusual request because while you always give credits to the writers, you don't always say no. Please don't let us finish without discussing this. So what makes this individual so different?
Well, I will say that Andrew Guest, who is the head writer of the show, when I saw his name come up at the end of the first episode, everything started to make sense. And what I mean by that is that Andrew Guest is a very, very gifted writer in making characters you should not like or who should be obnoxious human. That whole first scene in the first episode where he basically talks himself out of a gig is was painful to watch, first of all, as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was brutal to watch that. Because I've done it. I've done it. I've done everything he did where you overthink it and you're not present and in the moment. And Ron and I were sitting there watching it going, oh, stop talking. Literally, both of us going, stop talking. You're going to ruin your shot. You're about to miss your shot. You are about to miss your shot. And like, you're so close. And it's literally, to be perfectly blunt, it's literally one of the main reasons I made a point of learning improv because I have to be fully present in the moment. I can't be overthinking it. And I had to learn to do that. And that made me a better actor. And so watching that was so painful. And Andrew Guest absolutely absolutely captured it from every angle, from the people who are the grip, and from the casting director, and from the actor, and from the director's point of view. He captured what it's like when you meet somebody who's extremely talented, but yet they can't stop getting in their own way. I have directed that person. I have been that person. And he did it so well. And then when I saw his name, I was like, oh, okay, Community. He was one of the main writers on Community. Wrote one of my favorite episodes, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. He was one of the main writers on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I'm like, of course you got this. Of course you do. Soon as I saw his name, I was like, okay. And the humor that slips its way in, that's perfectly to the characters. Like Trevor, there's a scene, you haven't gotten to the episode yet, where Trevor instantly clocks that the person that they're talking to is a lying liar who lies. Because Trevor is a lying liar who lies. So it takes one to know one. And but Simon is so like isolated, which is a thing that comes up over and over again, that he has such a hard time connecting with people because he's so guarded about his abilities, that Andrew Guest being the writer for the show makes so much sense because he is always in every project he's ever done, whether it's 30 Rock, whether it's Community, whether it's Hope and Faith, which is a show I actually forgot about, The Twilight Zone, or Brockmire. No matter what it is, he has a really genuine ability to find the humanity in the worst people, A, because I shouldn't like Jeff Winger. For those who watch Community, everything about Jeff Winger is the type of stuff that would normally make me want to punch a baby. And yet he does make you like that character and empathize with that character. He has an uncanny ability to find the humanity in almost anyone. A, he's really good about writing villains. I keep thinking of oh my gosh, the closer. What is her actual name? Kevin Bacon's amazing wife, Kara Sedgwick, and her character on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which he created. And I'm like, oh, he's so good at writing a villain that you despise and you just, ooh. So I really want to give him his flowers because that is a hard line to write. And he's doing it every episode. Even there's one character, and Pete knows who I'm talking about, where I'm just like, leave them alone. But at the same time, I'm like, he's right, though. He's right. I hate that he's right. I hate the way he's going about what he's doing. But he's right. These people without training are dangerous. And they're a danger to themselves and other people. But at the same time, I hate the way he's going about what he's doing, because the way he's going about it is wrong. And so it's like, how do you make a character like that? How do you still find a way to make me have some empathy for him? And that's Andrew Guest. So give him his flowers, man, because he's doing a really good job of making these characters, each and every character. There's no throwaway characters. There's one absolutely bonkers and absolutely hilarious scene that you're going to get to very soon, Pete. And everyone in it is playing their A game because they're given great writing to play their A games with. So that's all I wanted to say, because like I rarely do I single out writers in MCU because they can be so inconsistent. And when I saw that he had come in at the last minute to fix some things in Fantastic Four, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. He's really good, and he's got a huge future ahead of him as long as he keeps on grounding his characters in their humanity. And he's doing a fantastic job.
Well, I mean, it sounds like his talents are well used, because I feel like the thing that the MCU has forgotten is that people buy comic books because they fall in love with particular characters, and they will abandon a run and jump on a new run the instant a writer who really they feel like has nailed and understands the character. They'll go wherever the ride goes. So I mean, and that's Chip Zdarsky on Daredevil, or whole Hickman on his stuff. If you bring in a writer who can really write characters, we were talking pre-show about Game of Thrones. When you can really write characters and characterization, especially for fantasy and sci-fi and comic book movies, it really does elevate it into something that's really must watch, because the powers and the abilities and all that are all secondary. It's the characters themselves that make it work, which is the reason why you could talk about somebody like Doorman. And I was like, yeah, I could see how Doorman could be a tragic character. So that's our quick take on Wonder Man. Definitely I'm happy because it's a much more positive response than I thought I was going to hear tonight. So definitely something now I've got to put into the hopper. It looks like maybe the MCU, maybe we're on an upswing. Maybe we'll see whether or not the Russos blow it. But it seems like
I don't know why you would say that. It's like you have no idea how pop culture works. You never, ever, ever jinx things like this, dude. Come on now.
Because I come from a Southern Black family, and we speak things into existence before they happen. That way, we see the earth with good positive energy. The same way I see this podcast with good positive energy, episode after episode after episode. Despite the efforts of other people to rain on my parade, somehow I still bring the sunshine and the silver lining. And so on that note, thank you so much for joining another episode of Pop Culture Uncovered, where we discuss the world of pop culture and comic books and video games and movies and as much other stuff as we can smuggle into the show. Thank you for checking us out. Check us out on Patreon. Please check us out on YouTube. I would love to be one of the people with a plaque in the background of the video, and you like, hey, well, boop boop. Plus, just help us out, because none of us like working for capitalistic lives, and we would love to be creative people who just make money doing podcasts, talking about things that are nice, and being nice to people, and even critiquing things in a way that's not sucky and evil. So if you like any of that, check us out on Patreon. We'll catch you soon. Have a good one. Peace. Bye.